Hello YouTube! Today on the Naughty Librarian we are recapping Prince Lestat and the Realms of Atlantis by Anne Rice. This is genuinely one of the weirdest books I have ever read my whole life. I would say this is at the level of weird of Lasher, when like they were reproducing so quickly they were like popping out babies like gremlins. Like, things get weird at Anne Rice. So when I say this is one of the weirdest things I've ever read, like, I mean it. With that all being said, let's get into this. Buckle up, everybody. So Realms of Atlantis starts maybe like 6 months after the end of Prince Lestat. And we're still dealing with Rash, and he is walking around and being upset because he's now like this outcast in the vampire world. Even like his longtime love Benedict has left him. So he blames Lestat for all of this. He's like, my life went to shit, it's all his fault. Can't possibly be your fault, Rashamandes, for doing all that bad stuff. Couldn't be you. But anyway, Rash, he's looking for comfort, so he goes and visits this other vampire named Roland. Now, I've said a lot, Rashamandes is kind of an a-hole. But compared to Roland, Rashamandes is a saint. Roland is the worst evil vampire. And it's revealed that he's been keeping this prisoner in his dungeon for over 10 years, like over a decade now. And it's this young man named Derek. Except the thing is, Derek isn't human. He's not a vampire, he's not a ghost. He's something else. There's a new type of immortal out there. Roland's like, hey Rash, why don't you go drink Derek's blood? Like, drink all of it, don't worry. I've drank all of his blood before. He grew it back. It's totally cool. He's immortal. Go drink all of it and see what you can see in his blood memories and like, tell me what he is. Tell me where he's from. He won't give me any information. And Rash is a little hesitant at first, but of course, Rash is an a-hole, so he's like, all right. And he like drains Derek. Derek is begging him not to, but who cares what Derek wants? While draining Derek, Rash finds out a bunch of stuff. He finds out that Derek is like 12,000 years old and like much older than vampires. Vampires, I think, in this modern era are only about like 6,000 years old. And Derek, he once lived in this glorious magical city made of glass, and it was really technological, mind you, 12,000 years ago. And also, hey, we're gonna throw in a casual bombshell here. Amel, you know, the spirit that had linked with Akasha, created vampires, was the leader of the city. Dun dun dun. Amel was once a person who was living 12,000 years ago, and he made Atlantis, apparently. So now that Rash has all this new information, he's like, how do I use this to my advantage? So he starts plotting ways that he could use this to like take Lestat down. Now, meanwhile, Lestat, he's still the prince. He's off doing his normal prince stuff. He's still, you know, combined with Amel. He's the new host. And he's also starting to experience Amel's dreams about this city being destroyed. He's like, what is this about? And Amel says he doesn't know. Lestat doesn't know. He goes and asks Gremt, you know, the founder of the Talamasca. He doesn't know. So he's just like, okay, well, shit, I don't know what to do. So Amel starts urging him to go to New Orleans. Go to New Orleans. Go meet back up with Louis. You love Louis. Like, I think you need some more Louis time. Like, let's go make up with Louis. So Lestat's like, you know what, Amel, I think you got a point there. So he grabs his bodyguards. Mind you, he's the prince now. He has bodyguards, and it's Thorn and Cyril. We've met Thorn in a few books. He's like a big burly Viking. And then Cyril, we've met briefly in several other books as well, but like I've never really brought him up in the reviews because he's never really done anything till now. But yeah, he's been around for a minute. Lestat, he goes over to his old apartment in New Orleans, and he sees Louis, and they kind of, you know, make up with each other again. And Louis's like, of course I'm going to be with you. Like, I keep trying to not be with you, and I always come back. So like, I'm tired of fighting it. Like, let's just be together. Which is actually really like kind of intelligent and self-aware for Louis, because Louis's whole thing is he loves to be sad, and like breaking up with Lestat is like peak Louis behavior because it makes him sad. And I will say throughout the book it is a recurring theme that Louis is kind of really smart all of a sudden. So Lestat and Louis, they hang out in New Orleans for quite some time. They just, you know, they're enjoying each other's company, doing vampire stuff, and their time gets cut short when Lestat, he gets this very urgent call from Armand, and Armand's like, yo, Lestat, shit has got crazy, you need to come deal with it. I captured this thing, this person thing, I don't know what it is. It's not a human, but it's not a vampire, it's another thing, and I don't know what to do with it. You need to come deal with this. And we're gonna put a pin in that for now. Let's flash back over to New York so we can meet a new character named Garrican. And Garrican is like Derek. He's like Derek's brother. He basically kind of reminisces about like the fact that he and 3 other people, so Garrican, Derek, this other 2 named Wealth and Capetria. They're all sent to Earth. Also, the people who sent them to Earth are super mad because another person they sent to Earth went native and messed up their plans, a certain person named Amel. So we're just getting bombshells about Amel all the time. So Amel and then Derek and Garrican all sent to Earth from elsewhere. So I guess they're aliens now. Now we have aliens. And since Amel made vampires, are vampires aliens? Things are gonna get weirder from here. So one day he's in New York, he sees Benji, little Benji, walking down the street, and he starts following him. He's like, oh, I should ask this guy questions. And Benji's like, the fuck are you following me for? He doesn't know who this guy is. He's like, oh, ah. So Benji just hops in a car and it speeds away. And Garrican's like, well, shit, I don't know what to do with myself. So sometime later, this other vampire comes up to him, and this is a vampire named Killer, and he comes up to him and he's like, the fuck you following Benji for, bruh? Do you got a problem? And just being really hot-headed. And then like he starts, you know, smelling Garrican. He's like, you don't smell human, what are you? And he bites him, and Garrican's like, oh no! So Garrican and Killer fight with each other, and it's really kind of brutal and like intense, you know, 2 immortal beings who are very strong fighting each other. However, Garrican does win the fight because he literally just grabs Killer's head and beats it until his brain comes out. And then Garrican sees little sparkles in the blood, so he's like, I'm gonna eat this brain. So Garrican eats the brain, and he realizes, oh, those sparkles are little traces of Amel. Cool, because they all knew Amel, and he's like, yay, Amel blood, what's this about? So after the brain meal, Garrican flees. He runs off because honestly, that's a lot to unpack right now. Before Garrican can get very far, Armand shows up. He grabs Garrican, flies off into the sky to go to his townhouse, and he just sticks him in the basement, and he chains him up. And that this is when he called Lestat like, hey, shit went down. So Garrican, he's trapped in the crypt. They have this other vampire named Eleni kind of watching over him. Eleni has been around since Interview with the Vampire. She's one of the vampires from Theatre the Vampire. And Garrican is reasonably quite scared about what these vampires are going to do to him because he's like, oh no, I'm trapped in the basement. So he's kind of like, I don't know if he has like this ability, it's never really cleared up in the book, that he can lure people in, because he starts talking to Eleni in this like soothing way, and she gets kind of closer and closer to him. And then he like, you know, like flex and busts out of the chains he's in, and then he grabs her head and starts smashing her head. Like, this is his one attack, is smash heads. But Garrican doesn't eat her brain, he just wants her to stop moving and fighting, so she's knocked out. However, Garrican stops because again he sees her blood and there's sparkles in it, so he's like, I should taste this blood. And through the blood connection, Amel speaks to him, and he's like, bro, I like Eleni, she's one of mine, stop killing her, not cool, stop it. So Armand, he comes down and he goes, she like bursts into the crypt, and Garrican's like, sorry, and he just like gives Armand Eleni. And you know, Armand has this like other vampires very injured and needs healing. What's he gonna do, attack Garrican, or is he gonna help his vampire friend? So Armand's like, oh my god, just get the fuck out of here, Garrican. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Garrican, he gets the heck out of there, and it's like right around dawn, because all of a sudden he starts seeing vampires just going like just passing out around him, and he's like, what is happening? Oh yeah, the sun's coming up. So now Garrican has like hours and hours of time to run while the sun is up. So the next day, Lestat and Louis come to New York. They meet up with Armand, they gather the vampire council, they start talking about what's going on here. Like, what do you mean this is a third party on the table? Humans, vampires, ghosts, I guess a fourth party. What are they? Everyone's talking about that. It kind of comes up in the council that other vampires have also been experiencing the same dream of this city, this glorious city being destroyed, and like everyone kind of puts it together. Mind you, these are a lot of very old vampires, that this must have been Atlantis that they're all seeing. And they've had this happen before where everybody sees a certain dream throughout the blood. So they're like, okay, so we're all getting Amel's dreams, and he was in Atlantis somehow. Cool. This is not the weirdest thing we've had to believe before. And Amel's not really much help because he can only remember like flashes and little bits of information, but he does acknowledge, yes, Atlantis was once where he lived before it was destroyed, and he died in the destruction of it, and that's how he knows like those other creatures that are around that they don't know what they are. Okay, so let's put a pin in the council behavior, and we're gonna go back over to Rash. What's he been up to? So Rash and Roland, they take Derek and they move him out of Roland's place in Poland, I think, where he lives, and they bring him over to Rash's castle in England. And they bring a couple other vampires with them, Arian and Alessandra. Very brief synopsis here. Arian, we met him in Blackwood Farm. He made, I am totally blanking on their name, but I'll put it on the screen, the vampire that made Quinn into a vampire. And Alessandra, she's from Theatre de Vampire, so she's been around off and on forever here, and they're both there. So they're all with Derek, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next here because they want more information from him. And they're also, you know, they have Benji's broadcast playing in the background, and they start hearing that like, oh, the vampires have figured out some shit. They have met another person that's like Derek in New York, and also they got a lead on another person like them, and is this woman named Karen, who's obviously Capetria, and she has been working at one of like Gregory, one of the vampires, Gregory, the financier, the Department of the Treasury of the vampire world, Gregory's laboratories that he owns. And then she was traveling with yet another one of these creatures that they don't even know about yet. So like they have figured out some shit. So now Derek has heard this too. He's like, the others are alive, and he's all happy about it, but he can't tell them about it because they're gonna go after his friends. So Derek refuses to tell them anything. They keep asking him, tell us what you are, tell us where the others are, tell us all your history, we want to know shit. And he won't say anything to them. Rash is getting very impatient with this. He's like, I need information so I could go shove it in Lestat's face, and you are fucking with my revenge. You gotta tell me something. And Derek refuses still, so Rash is like, you know what? I've got an idea. So Rash, he leaves, he comes back, and he has an axe, and he's like, Derek, you gotta start telling me stuff, or I'm gonna start cutting off pieces of you. And I know it won't kill you, you're immortal, but you're gonna have fewer pieces. And Derek still won't tell him anything, so Rash chops his arm off, mainly just to see what would happen. Also, torture. Damn, Rash, have you tried not being an asshole? Like, maybe you're the problem. Anyway, this doesn't work, besides, you know, Derek being tortured and, like, retreating further and further into himself, where he's just sobbing in the corner and won't speak at all. So they're like, well, shit. And Arian and Alessandra are like horrified, and they're like, Rash, what the fuck are you doing? Stop it. Like, this is fucked up, bro. And no, he doesn't want to listen to anybody. And before he goes, Rash, he grabs the severed arm and he just throws it in the fire just to, you know, put the icing on his asshole cake he's made for himself. And this is the point in the story where I lost my shit, because I'm about to tell you some of the weirdest shit I have ever read in my whole life. So prepare yourselves. So Derek, he's still locked up in the dungeon. He's just despairing about his life. He's missing an arm. His arm got thrown in the fire, so, you know, it'll get destroyed. He won't even be able to reattach it somehow. So he's just sad. Until his arm starts crawling out of the fire itself, and Derek's like, oh my god, what's happening? And the arm like just keeps crawling over to Derek, and Derek's like frozen in the corner, doesn't know what to do because he's horrified. So the hand, it gets to Derek, it climbs up Derek, it rips his shirt open. In the palm of the hand on the severed arm, it starts growing a little face. I'm not making this up, okay? It grows a little face with a little mouth that starts making sucking motions. And the hand latches onto Derek and starts breastfeeding. Derek is male, first of all, and now his severed arm is trying to breastfeed from him. So yeah, this is a lot to unpack, and frankly, my brain still hurts thinking about this. But Derek, like I would probably do in this situation, goes, nope, and like passes out because nope, brain shut off. This is too much. Sometime later, Derek wakes up and he's like, whoa, that was weird. Oh, hey, I have an arm again. My arm grew back. Neat. I didn't know I could do that. And what happened to the severed arm, you might ask? Well, the severed arm grew a new person. So now there's two of them. There is like Derek and his full-grown man arm baby who's in the room with him going, Father, hi, I'm new. And Derek's like, what has happened? So apparently arm face breastfed and then turned into another person. They reproduced through mitosis apparently. He's like, Dad, help boost me up. There's like a little window over there. Boost me up. I'll get out. I'll hide, and then when the sun comes up, I'll break you out when all the vampires are asleep. So Derek is overjoyed. He's like, wow, I have a son, and he's gonna help free me from prison. This is awesome. So a few hours later, the sun is up, the vampires are asleep, and his son comes down into the dungeon, breaks Derek out. So this is the best thing that's happened to Derek in over a decade. The son is like, hey, I should have a name. Could you give me a name? What about like Derek 2? And Derek's like, no, that is a stupid idea. I don't know. We'll call you Dare 2, short for Derek 2. Like they're not the best at naming people. Also, Dare 2 is incredibly intelligent. They're almost kind of like Taltos, how they reproduce, because it's born and they go straight into adulthood knowing stuff already. It was kind of the same idea here, but with mitosis. So Dare 2, he is really confident and smart, and he doesn't have the same like emotional issues that Derek has because for multiple reasons here. So he gets dressed, he brings Derek upstairs, they steal a bunch of like Benedict's clothes, and Dare 2, he like starts getting everything together that they're going to need to escape. And Derek's really not much help because trauma. So this is really Dare 2 running the whole show. So they get food and like technology pieces they need, like computers and phones and all this kind of stuff. They get everything together. And the last thing they do before departing, because they're gonna steal one of Rash's boats, Dare 2, he calls Benji's vampire hotline that like is always live on the radio. So he calls up and he leaves a message and he's like, hey, I am one of the other people and like we're alive, and like Rash and Roland, total a-holes. They've tortured Derek for over a decade. They suck. And then he switches over to like the ancient language of Atlantis, and he starts speaking in that language for another message only for Capetria to hear, because Capetria is like the leader of these people. And it basically say, hey, we're escaping. We're going to Derry, Ireland. Meet you there. And throughout the day, they're listening to Benji's broadcast as well to see if the others got their message, if they're going to respond, and they do. So Capetria, Welf, Garrican, they all start leaving messages back and forth to each other all day on the vampire broadcast. And they all end up meeting up with each other in Provence, France. They're very happy because, it's been like centuries and centuries, or at least maybe even a millennia or a few since they've seen each other. However, all of the other beings are like, hey, Derek, who's new guy? What's this about? And so Derek has to tell them what happened. Like, oh, my arm got chopped off and it grew a man baby somehow. And now we got more of us. So they're like, huh, interesting. But Derek, he had a long day. He goes to bed. And then he wakes up the next day and only to find out that all of the other, beings have been multiplying all night. So now there's 9 of them. Everybody's been making like babies through a body part, like a hand or an arm or a foot or whatever. They've just been making new pieces. So, oh my, there's so many more of them. We're gonna put a pin in them. We're gonna go back to the vampires, right? They have found out all these messages happened during the day. They're like, what is going on? No one understands the language they're speaking. No one's ever heard it before. It's 12,000 years old. The oldest one of them is about 6,000. They don't know what the hell's going on. And on top of that, Arian and Alessandra left Roshamandes and Roland. They're like, those guys are a-holes. We're not dealing with them anymore. They come to the council and they basically just confirm all of the stuff that those people said were true. They're like, yeah, we watched him chop his arm off. Like, Rash has gone off the deep end. We're sorry. Like, we left. It was fucked up. And all the rest of the council is very adamant that Rash should die. They're like, man, fuck this guy, right? Like, why are we keeping him alive? Lestat, however, is the only one who, like, opposes this because for reasons, I don't know. He doesn't really have good reasons besides he's like, Rash is really old and he's seen a lot of stuff and it'd be a waste of a vampire to kill him. But, like, is it? I don't know. We got a lot of 6,000-year-old vampires around, so I think we could spare one. Next thing the council wants to do is hunt down and kill these other creatures, maybe, or capture them and lock them up or something, because they don't know what they are. And Lestat's like, no, we're not a bunch of a-holes. Stop it. You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on the broadcast. I'm going to make an announcement to them. I'm going to be like, hey, we're cool. I want to talk. Here's a new phone number that no one has and you can call it. And then, like, we can meet up and, like, figure this out together. Now, this part isn't essential to the story, but I want to throw it in because it does, like, clear up something. So Lestat, he asked Arian to stay behind because he wants to talk to him for a minute. Basically, he's like, Arian, do you know what happened to Quinn and Mona? Because I haven't seen them. And Arian has to be the one to give him the bad news that he saw Mona die in the burnings. From the last book where there was just vampire massacres every day, Mona Mayfair was one of the casualties of the burnings. It hurts my feelings to have this character go out in such, like, a shitty way, not even on page or anything. And he's like, but what about Quinn? And Arian's like, I didn't see Quinn burn, but likely he did too, because he would have shown up by now if he was alive. And the fact that he hasn't seen Mona, like, Lestat's like, you know, like, I think I knew that they were dead, but I didn't want to believe it until now. So it's really sad. Those are his little vampire buddies. Very well-known characters that we all love. Quinn is just the most charming, adorable person in the world. Everyone loves him. And then Mona Mayfair is Mona freaking Mayfair, and they both died in the burnings off page. Fuck you. Like, I was very upset by this, but I just wanted to bring it in there because we've talked about them for so many videos and books. We should know what happened in the end, and this book actually gives you closure to that, but, like, fuck that closure. That's stupid. I'm very upset by it. So Lestat leaves that conversation and he's very sad, but he finally, you know, he gets his phone call from the beings and he's like, hey, come over to my chateau. It's very remote. There's a lot of vampires here, but we're all cool. No one's gonna hurt you. Come during the daytime. Like, that's the safest. Come during daytime. Be inside the chateau before the sun sets and, like, you're fine. And so they're like, okay. The beings agree and they're gonna meet up the next day. But meanwhile, all that was happening. Guess who else was listening to the broadcast and Lestat saying, like, hey, we want to make friends and stuff? Oh, it was Rash and Roland. So now that, like, they know all of the other vampires know exactly what they did, they're like, oh no, shit has hit the fan. What are we gonna do? So they separate. Roland goes and hides. Rash, he flies off into the night all pissed off as all hell, and he goes around and he starts burning down houses that were associated with the beings, like pulling a Louis at this point. So yeah, he's not having a good night. And he shows up on the cliff outside of, like, the chateau, and he's just standing there and he's wondering, what am I supposed to do next? I burned down all the houses. I'm still pissed as all hell at Lestat. Everybody hates me. And he's just like, should I burn down the chateau with all the vampires in it? Would the ones who aren't burned come kill me for that? Like, what does it fucking matter anymore? Benedict left me anyways. Like, he's just, like, going down a spiraling staircase of despair. There is a vampire that comes up to Rash, and it's Benedict, because Benedict has been with him for, like, centuries. Benedict, he begs Rash to stop. He's like, please, all of the elders want you dead. Only Lestat is keeping you alive at this point because he won't give the order to kill you. And Benedict tells him that like he's tried to live without him for this short amount of time, but he can't live without them. This is like a true vampire love story, and he's like, if the elders are gonna come kill you, they're gonna have to come through me. I don't want to live without you, so if you're gonna die, I'm gonna die too. Do you want me to die? No? Like, then we should stop and leave. Really, all Rash wanted out of this was to have Benedict back anyways, and now he has Benedict back and like being in love with him, so he's like, okay, and then he just grabs Benedict. They fly off together. So the next evening, all the vampires wake up and the beings have arrived. So they all get together in like the council chamber to have like a secret conversation. Capetria's like, hey, I'll tell you our origin. Like, this is our whole backstory. 12,000 years ago, like I mentioned earlier, Capetria, Garrican, Welf, and Derek were all created by these people, and they basically look like giant lizard birds. Like, as far as I can tell, they look like the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. Like, that's what these beings look like. And they were created on this other world called Bravana. And the Bravanans, they all live in this big tree, because, you know, lizard birds. And they have all these different portals in the tree that go to different worlds. So the Bravanans, the lizard birds, they created these four, and basically they took like a little bit of everything that exists on Earth, and they made like a soup, and they put the soup in a human shape. And they call them replimoids. That's basically what they are. It's not gonna get any clearer even if I try to explain this better. The Bravanans, they created them for a very particular purpose, which was coming to Earth and destroying all sentient life. And the lizard birds want Earth wiped clean in particular because Earth was the only one of countless planets that had mammals evolve into the dominant species. You know, they're lizard birds, get it? Dinosaurs and stuff. So basically they're just like, hey, the only reason this happened is because like a random fucking asteroid hit the Earth and it killed off all the dinosaurs. So now fucking mammals, am I right? Like, they're just upset about it. Mammals are just abominations to them. So it's the Bravanans' plan to send the replimoids to Earth and then have them infiltrate Atlantis, and then they're supposed to cause an extinction level event, and then as they're being consumed in the extinction level explosion event, their atoms would scatter and they would dissolve, and then that would cause a plague and make the air so toxic that all of the mammals would die off, even the ones that weren't at ground zero. And that kind of resets the clock, and then all of like the birds and reptiles would have a second chance at becoming the dominant species. Obviously our group is rather distraught at hearing this, that their whole point to their existence is to blow up and die. Like, they were made human, they have human thoughts and feelings, and they're like, hey, guess what? Go die. And they're like, like, could we not die? Like, is that like an option? And the Bravanans are like, oh no. So they're all kind of upset. It kind of causes a definite rift between the replimoids and the Bravanans. They're like, I don't think you got our best interests at heart here. So they're like, I don't know about this. But why do they need to infiltrate Atlantis in particular? Well, it's because they sent another replimoid to Earth before them, and it was their responsibility to do kind of the same thing that they're setting them to do, was to start a plague and kill off all the mammals, except that he could pick a few that he liked and like inoculate them against the virus, and then they could live to make a few more and they can like hang out or something. Like, that was the plan. However, the replimoid they sent was like, fuck that noise, betrays them, knocks out all of the surveillance equipment they have around the planet, and then creates Atlantis with this big dome on top that makes it so the Bravanans can't see into it. Like, the Bravanans can see everywhere on Earth except for fucking Atlantis, and it's making them mad. So that's why they want the replimoids to go particularly to Atlantis, mainly to stick it to that other replimoid. Guess who the other replimoid was, everybody? Oh, it was Amel. The dome is the big deal here because it's created out of a substance called luricastria, which only Amel has figured out how to make, and it blocks the Prevanans. So that's like our crux of the story here is the luricastria. So it comes time for the mission to start, and the Prevanans, they send the replimoids down to Earth. Step 1 is to become part of all of like the little tribes that live in the wilderness around Atlantis, because they like work with Atlantis. So they have to infiltrate there and then like prove themselves as really smart and capable and stuff, and the really smart, capable people get to move to Atlantis. During this time, you know, much like Amel, they start going native. They're like, humans are kind of great. Like, yeah, they suck sometimes. We've seen fucked up stuff, but like 90% of the time, like, they're really cool and like we like them. Why are we supposed to kill them again? Like, they're just kind of like thinking critically, which is not what the Prevanans want them to do. Eventually, the replimoids are actually invited to come live in Atlantis because, you know, they're much smarter and stronger than all the humans around them. And they get there, and Atlantis is this technological marvel. Looks a lot like the modern world. They have skyscrapers and like escalators and stuff. It looks like a big shopping mall, I guess. But it's just like this technologically advanced, marvelous world with these glass towers and everything. It's just like this fantasy land. And all of the people in it seem to live in harmony. No one's fighting with each other. There's no like real crime. Everyone's chilling because everyone has what they need to survive. And even like the wilderness people outside of Atlantis, they're happy too. They don't live in Atlantis, but they still have access to it. They can go in and like trade goods. It's like a mutually beneficial relationship between them. So like everything's going great down here. So our replimoid group, they get settled into the city, and then one day Amel sends a guy to pick them up, and they're like, and the guy's like, hey, our leader Amel wants to have a talk with you guys. Come with me. So they get there, they meet Amel, and Amel's like, so like y'all are replimoids, right? Like, yeah, I know you're replimoids, and the Prevanans sent you here to get me to go outside the dome, right? Like that's what they've been wanting for a while. They want me to leave the dome so they can get me. Like, what's your elaborate plan this time? Like, this isn't the first time they've sent replimoids after Amel. And Kipetri is like, the Prevanans don't really care if you go outside the dome because they want the Earth destroyed. They don't want to just get you this time. They're gonna destroy everything. And Amel's like, well, shit. That's a lot. That's new and different. How about y'all sit down? I got some splaining to do. First of all, the Prevanans, they're full of shit, okay? The Prevanans don't want Earth destroyed. There's no way they want it destroyed. Think about it. They sent me down here to destroy it. I didn't do it. They really want you to come down here and fuck shit up and start conflict and chaos so all of the people are in distress. Because haven't you noticed how the tree that they live on is powered by all of the surveillance equipment they have, and most of it's on Earth? It's because their whole society is powered by suffering and how they can extract it, and there's no better suffering in the universe than like highly evolved mammals with emotions. So basically it's like Monsters Inc., where they power their city through harvesting the screams of children. It's like that, but with lizard birds this time. So since the Prevanans feed off suffering, they're actually really pissed at Amel because he's created luricastria over their dome in Atlantis. So this is a spot where they can't like get any power from. And secondly, all of the humans in Atlantis and all of the humans around it that like work with Atlantis are living in a harmonious society where there's not very much suffering at all. And on top of all that, Amel has been learning how to replicate luricastria at other places, so he's gonna start putting up domes all over the effing place. So it's gonna cut the Prevanans off completely from all of the mammals, and they won't be able to get any of their suffering anymore, and therefore they're going to lose their power source. So the replimoids are listening to Amel, and they're like, you know, now that you say it, this actually makes a lot of sense. The group decides to stay in Atlantis. They're like, you know what? The alternative is us blowing up and dying, and we don't really want to do that. So Amel we're on your side. We're gonna stay here and help you make the world a better place because we like humans too, you know, like this is a good idea. So the replimoids, they go about living their lives as normal for a little bit, and they're friends with Amel. They hang out with him often. And then one night Amel's like, hey, I want to have a dinner party. I'll introduce you to the other replimoids that they sent before you who live in the city. You might as well get to know each other. So there's like a whole bunch of replimoids apparently. However, most of the other replimoids are rather simple. Like they're not as complex as the recent group. There are a lot of times they're like someone got lazy in making them and just copy pasted essentially. So they're all like kind of exactly the same and they look almost exactly the same except for one of them. One of them is named Maxim, and Maxim is much more complex than his other counterpoints. And he also just seems to vehemently disagree with Amel about literally everything. Maxim believes that what Amel's doing here, creating this utopian society, is robbing humanity of something their soul can only really achieve through suffering, through endurance, all of that kind of stuff. If they never have to suffer or endure something, they have no reason to progress. So he's like, you've stalled humanity. I don't agree with you. And guess what, everybody? Another casual bombshell here that Capetria just throws into the story. And she's like, yeah, actually, you guys have met Maxim before? Because he died in Atlantis and he stayed around as a spirit, but he stopped calling himself Maxim and started calling himself Memnoch. So fucking Memnoch the devil was also a replimoid ghost who like fucked with Lestat. Like, I'm not even gonna get into all of that. That's too much data to go through here. I have videos on it. But enough on Memnoch, let's go back to Atlantis here. The replimoids in Amel, they stay up talking all night. You know, Maxim is left to go brood. And all of a sudden, Capetria is like, why is everything shaking? Is it me? Did I drink too much or is the whole room shaking? And Amel's like, no, the room is shaking. So apparently the Bravanans have found another solution in order to destroy humanity. They're just gonna do it them damn selves. Bravana, they grabbed a bunch of asteroids and they're throwing them through the portals, just like a hail of asteroids hitting the earth, exploding everything, including Atlantis. It hits the dome, it shatters it. The sea is basically swallowing the city. Like millions of people are dying. The replimoids and Amel get separated. And the next thing the replimoids know is that they've all washed up on shore. Mind you, they're all separated now. Except for Capetria and Wealth, they ended up staying together, but Garrican and Derek missing. And throughout time, all of the replimoids have acted in the same way, where they basically just found a really dark, icy hole to lay down in and freeze for a few centuries, and then they wake up, they go like peeking on humanity for a little bit, and then when they get tired of being alive again, they go back in the snow and take another ice nap. A lot like vampires, honestly. And they've been doing that, you know, for 12,000 years, and now we're up to the present. And in recent years, Capetria's become a scientist, trying to learn more about what she is. How do I create Luricastria again? Also, you know, the Vampire Chronicle books exist in this universe. Other people in the world have read them. She has read the book. She's read about Amel in there, and she's like, oh shit, Amel's still alive, kind of. We gotta save him. So that's like kind of her impetus to becoming a scientist and trying to figure out how to make Luricastria. So after that knowledge bomb went off, all of the vampires are pretty much just speechless. There's like, this is a lot to unpack. I don't even know where to start. Amel, you know, has also been listening to all of this inside of Lestat, and Amel's like, Lestat, I want to talk to Capetria. I need to talk to her real bad. But Amel is so desperate to speak to Capetria that instead of just letting Lestat do the talking for him, he tries to take over Lestat's body from him. And this causes Lestat immense pain throughout his whole body. He feels like it's getting ripped in half. It's just intense. And Capetria ends up stopping Amel because she's like, you're destroying Lestat's brain. You need that to live. So Amel's like, Lestat, go drink her blood. That way, through the blood, we can talk to each other. And so Capetria is like, sure, let's go. And so she lets Lestat drink her blood, and Amel just explains to her what Luricastria is. He's like, you already have Luricastria. You're made of it. That's what the Bravanans put in your body to animate you. It's what you are. Essentially, you can replicate it the same way you're replicating others. You just pull it out and there you go. It's Luricastria. Eventually, Capestria, she blacks out from blood loss, and Lestat, they have to drag him off to bed because he is just completely wrecked from this whole experience. But the big takeaway of this whole experience here is that we've now learned that it's the Luricastria that became part of Amel on like a subatomic level that was still in his spirit form. It was still had particles of Luricastria in it, and that substance is what binds to people and then turns them into vampires. But moving forward, the next night, a few vampires, Gregory, Arian, Sevrain, a couple others, we're not even gonna get into who went, whatever at this point. They go ask Rash some questions. And by ask, I mean they pin him up to the wall telepathically and they demand to know where Roland is. They need Rash to sell out Roland, but the thing is, Rash genuinely doesn't know where Roland is. He's like, I don't know, he went off somewhere. Fuck if I know. However, luckily enough for everybody, some other vampires, Tescamen and Flavius, when they found Roland, they drag him in to the room in front of Rash. And the elder vampires all use their fire gift and they burn Roland to death very graphically right in front of Rashamandes for what he did to Derek. So after Roland's dead, all the vampires, they kind of turn back to Rash, and like Benedict jumps in front of Rash and he's like, you know, he meant what he said earlier. He's like, if you're gonna kill him, you have to kill me with him. Like, no, you can't kill him because you're gonna have to kill us both. And all the other vampires are like, oh my god, chill, okay? Lestat said we couldn't kill you. He didn't say shit about Roland. We could kill Roland. Fuck Roland, right? No one gives a shit about Roland. They're like, Rash, just say you're sorry and promise to stop being a dick and we're good, okay? Like, that's all you have to do. Benedict's like, Rash accepts this, right? Rash, you accept this? And Rash is like, yeah, fine, okay, I'm sorry, all right? And so the vampire's like, all right, cool. And they leave. Back at the chateau, Capetria and her people, they're preparing to leave. Lestat tells her that they killed Roland for what he did to Derek, like an act of good faith. Like, fuck that guy. We don't agree with what he did. He's gone. Justice, you know, one of those things. And they're like, cool, thanks, Lestat. We're gonna head out. And Marius and Lestat are still really trying to keep him here because they've only just scratched the surface of the deeper meaning between these two groups of people. But Confetria is still refusing. She's like, I've got shit to do. Like, I can't stay. Here's a vial of my blood. You could just give it to Farid to play with. Like, he wanted some, right? And so they're like, okay, fine. They just let them go. Lestat's like, oh wait, Capetria, Amel gave me a note to give to you. Amel dictated a note for Lestat to write, but like phonetically in their ancient language. So it's like written in English, but phonetically their language, so she can like read it. And Lestat doesn't know what it says. He just knows he wrote a bunch of nonsense words down and he gave it to Capetria. So she reads the note and Amel tells her he loves Lestat and he loves the vampires and she can't hurt them, period. And then if she can't do what she's trying to do without hurting Lestat and the vampires, she's not allowed to do it. Very mysterious here. They part ways. Lestat, he takes the blood over to Farid, and they've just made this huge discovery here because they've been going through all of the orders that Capetria has made throughout the years, working in Gregory's laboratory, what she's been ordering, what possibly could she have been working on for all these years. And they have found out that she has ordered enough raw materials that she could make her own empty replimoid body that could host another replimoid, aka she's gonna try to take Amel out of Lestat and stick him in his own body. So all of the vampires are very freaked out about this because they could kill all of them. They're all attached to Amel. They're like, well, shit, that is not gonna work. However, Lestat's not really upset about this. He's just like, yeah, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, I don't know. Amel doesn't want to hurt us, so we're just gonna have to trust him. Like, I know what Amel wants, and not to kill us all, so let's just go with the flow. And just because Lestat's like chill with this, doesn't calm down the rest of the vampire world, okay? Everyone's still pretty much in an uproar about not wanting to get annihilated by this, so everyone's a little on edge. And for several weeks, it's just tense. Everyone's wondering what's gonna happen next. Lestat talks to Amel, and he's like, well, is there a way to do it for real? Like, is she going to be able to do this? Can she snip the tether to all the other vampires? And like, can she do it in a way that it only hurts me and not everyone else? Because I'll get hurt if it means everyone else gets to live. I'll die. And Amel's like, Lestat, I love you. You're my favorite vampire in the whole entire world. I'm not letting her kill you. Stop thinking like this. So it's kind of, they like their friendship with each other here. And so there's really nothing to do. So it's just kind of like, well, this is a wait and see. So Lestat, he spends more and more time with Louis because, you know, it's always Louis for Lestat. Remember I said earlier that Louis is actually really, really smart in this book? Let's get into that. So Lestat and Louis are talking about this whole everyone's connected to Amel thing. And Louis is like, you know, I've been thinking about this too. I'm pretty sure I figured out how this works. I've done it. Let's go talk to Farid. Trust me. So Lestat and Louis, they go over to Farid's laboratory in Paris to go talk to him. And Louis is like, hey, have you ever heard about this metaphysical theory called the silver cord? It's basically like your mind and your body can be separated, but they're both attached still through a silver cord, you know, an ethereal silver cord. But if one side dies, then the tether between the mind and the body is severed. And everyone's like, Louis, this is some woo-woo stuff out of the 20s when they were doing like, you know, spiritualism. Like, I don't think this silver cord is real. And Louis is like, oh no, it's super real because like I'm alive and I'm not attached to Amel anymore. And everyone's like, the fuck? What, Louis? Did you care to tell anybody this sooner? And he's like, well, I didn't really figure it out till recently, but like every time that like all of the vampires in the world are connected to Lestat and when he has pain, everyone feels it. I don't feel anything. I'm pretty sure I'm not attached. And like, I am fine. I'm obviously still a vampire and still alive. I'm doing okay. And Louis goes on to tell everybody that like in order to sever the cord between Amel and the vampire, someone's gotta die. In this instance, Louis became separated because he died. In Merrick, he stayed out in the sun all day. He was a crispy piece of beef jerky. His heart stopped. However, you know, still a vampire and his body was still whole. It wasn't a pile of ashes. So he was able to be resuscitated through vampire blood. So his heart started beating again and he came back to life. But since he died, the cord was severed. And it's the same for all of the vampires because when someone becomes a vampire, they don't actually die. Like everybody has a heartbeat in here. You didn't die. You just kind of transitioned into being a vampire. So in order to like sever the cord, you gotta die for a little bit and then you get brought back and you're okay. So, you know, no big deal, everybody. Just die for a minute. So like, way to go, Louis, for figuring things out. It's like, you don't just have a great ass. You got a great brain too, buddy. Like, good for Louis. Like, he finally came through in the end. So then all the rest of the vampires are just all like volunteering to have their hearts stopped to see if this theory really works or if Louis like special. And Farid is like, oh my god, screw it. He just goes to his lab, he grabs a couple of syringes, he comes back. So Farid is like, oh my god, everybody stop. Just chill out. Seth, here, take this one, stab me in a little bit. And he puts the other syringe into his heart. Farid stops his own heart. Bleh. Farid's like dead now. And Seth is like, oh my god. So they wait around for like, I don't know, like 30 minutes or so. And they're like, all right, well, let's try to restart it. So Seth gives him the other shot and like Farid comes back to life. His heart starts again. But they still have to finish the experiment and see, did this actually work? Like, will Farid feel things that Lestat feels? So I don't know who does it, but someone tases Lestat essentially. And he's like, bleh, like he gets tased. And all of the vampires in the room get tased along with him and it hurts. Except for Farid and Louis, and they're over there like, oh, well, shit, I didn't feel anything. This is a great idea. Oh my gosh, knock it out of the park, Louis. And Lestat starts talking to Amel in his mind, and he's like, Amel, would this work if I did it? Would it sever the tethers to all of the vampires? Would it work for me? And if we do this, Amel, would you be okay? Like, I don't want to hurt you or have you get killed off inside of my body. Like, what's gonna happen? And Amel tells him that yes, it would work if Lestat died, the source of all of the tethers, then all of the tethers would snap. And also Amel would be fine. He'll just be chilling in Lestat's body until it gets resuscitated. Cause like, where's he gonna go? Like, isn't this whole situation just a kick to the nuts or what? Like all this time, apparently Amel never needed to be the core of all vampires. Like, if Akasha just died back in Queen of the Damned, everybody would have been fine. No one needed to eat her brain and become the new host of Amel. This whole time, none of this mattered. This is the 12th book of the series and they just changed everything in this book, but whatever. So now that everybody has a plan, they have to set it into motion. So they call it Benji. They're like, Benji, you need to make a repeating announcement on the broadcast that tells all vampires that they need to be in a really safe spot tomorrow at 6 p.m. France time, because we're going to do an experiment for like 30 minutes and like shit might get weird. So you've got to be in a safe location, period. Play it all day. So they start playing that. Everyone goes to bed for the day and they're going to, do it the next night. However, during the daytime, Capetria hears this broadcast, and so she shows up at the chateau the next night and she's like, let me help you. However, a lot of the vampires are still pretty mad at her for the whole idea of wanting to rip Amel out of Lestat in the first place, and the fact that she was like always planning it and she was growing a secret Amel body this whole time, so no one really trusts her. There's a lot of arguing going on here, and Lestat is like, oh my god, fine, help if you want to, Capetria. I'm going downstairs until y'all figure this out. So Farid and Capetria, they get everything set up for the experiment here. They're gonna stop Lestat's heart. So Lestat, he just lays down in bed. Louis with them. They're holding hands. It's actually really sweet. Like, Lestat's like, okay, I'm ready. And then they stop his heart with just a shot. It's not like a traumatic experience. And Lestat, he just kind of falls asleep, and then he wakes up in his mind and he's in Atlantis with Amel, and they're having like a dream walk together. They're hanging out, they're walking through the streets of Atlantis, they're talking to each other, and then all of a sudden Lestat feels like a snap, and then everything starts fading away, and he wakes up because they restarted his heart. And he's like, oh my god, is everyone okay? Like, what happened? Was everyone okay? Like, he asks about everybody else because, he's all discombobulated. And Farid's like, yeah, actually we were fine the whole time. Like, we got a little tired for like 5-10 minutes, but then like nothing. We were just all hanging out, waiting for 30 minutes to wake you up. We were fine the whole time. And Lestat's like, okay, good. And he starts looking for Amel in his mind because like, oh my gosh, is Amel okay? And then he feels Amel in the back of his mind, and Amel's like, yeah, I'm cool. And everybody is just relieved that it worked. So now officially, none of the vampires are still attached to Amel. They're each individual entity. So this is great news for the vampire world, but still a little tense for Lestat, because Lestat still has Amel inside of him. Like, what would happen to Lestat if Capetria really tries to take Amel out of him? Would Lestat survive that situation? There's still a lot of questions here. So this goes on for some time, like a few months, and then one night Capetria calls him and she's like, hey, meet me at Notre Dame because I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be to try to get Amel out of you. Like, let's go. So Lestat goes to Notre Dame and he meets with Capetria and she's talking to him. She's like, let's just go. And he's like, well, is it safe? Am I gonna survive? And she's like, probably. Like, she doesn't know either. She's like, this is a problem, okay? Like, you know what? I'm resigned to this because I want what's best for Amel too, but like, I'm not ready to do it yet. So give me some time here. So Lestat, he's about to leave, but before he can, someone comes up behind him and like grabs him in this really powerful grip. Guess who it is, everybody? Fucking Rash showing back up to be an a-hole. So he grabs Lestat and he's like, hey, Capetria, I'll bring Lestat to your lab for you to make up for what I did to Derek, because yeah, it was a little fucked up, okay? I'm sorry. And also, fuck you, Lestat. I'm still really mad at you, okay? Like, you chopped my arm off. Payback's a bitch, homie. Lestat's bodyguards, Cyril and Thorn, do follow him there. They go with him everywhere. And they try to fight Rash, but like, Lestat, he's like, no, stop fighting, everybody. It's fine. I surrender, okay? So, Lestat, he goes off with Rash and over to Capetria's lab. So, Rash is just literally pinning Lestat down to an operating table because, chains and stuff aren't going to stop him from breaking loose. Just until the sun comes up, which is gonna be any minute now. Because once he's unconscious, it's kind of the perfect time to start doing this whole transferal surgery type of thing that Capetria needs to do. He's gonna be unconscious anyway. So the sun comes up, Lestat out for the day. The next thing Lestat knows is that he wakes up and he's alone in this surgical theater, and he's like, what happened to me? He feels his head. He's like, okay, well, I still have my hair, thank God. But like, he does feel like this weird seam in his skull, and he's like, oh god, okay, I guess I'll go home. Like, he's just kind of like really a little bit sluggish. Mind you, he just had like brain surgery, so like, yeah, I get it. And he's like, well, can I still use my vampire gifts? Like, is this gonna work? And he's like, oh good, I can fly. He leaves Paris, flies back to the chateau, and he gets there and all the vampires are like, yay, Lestat's alive. They're all very excited that he's alive and then he's there and he didn't die. Everyone's very excited to see him. And Lestat, you know, he goes around, he's greeting everybody, and Louis there, and he was like sick with worry. He's been like sobbing, he's blood tears everywhere. He's like, I thought you were dead. It was one of those things. Louis needs to be consoled. So Lestat, he like consoles Louis for some time. He's like, okay, is everyone all right? I need to go have some private time. I've been through a lot. So he leaves, he's off doing private time, and he tries to speak to Amel because, you know, Amel's been part of his body for quite some time at this point, and there's no response. Amel's gone, and Lestat is like kind of devastated. So for the next few months, Lestat just spends his time with Louis mainly, you know, doing his vampire prince duties when he needs to. But mainly he just goes and explores Paris with Louis, and they're all being in love and junk. It's just really cute. One night, he and Louis are at a cafe, and Lestat feels like someone is watching him. And it's this guy with like super red hair and super green eyes. And it's Amel in his new replimoid body. And Lestat's like, oh my God! He's really excited because they're getting reunited. So they greet each other. They're incredibly happy to be reunited. They're just so happy that they're both alive and they're friends still. And Amel, he's like, yeah, I'm fine. I mean, this is like really my first time going out by myself because I had to relearn what it's like to have a body of my own, because apparently you have to think a lot to move stuff. So it was a whole type of thing where he had to learn how to walk and control a body again. However, they're both still so connected to each other because there's like this special kind of love that forms between two people who are literally sharing the same body. So they both have this really deep love for each other, and they don't want to be apart, even though the replimoids are really keeping Amel on kind of a short leash at the moment because, you know, they just gave him a body. They want to keep him around. The replimoids are apparently still replicating too. There's gonna be a bunch of them, and Lestat's like, should we be worried about this? And Amel's like, no, like, they're doing their thing, but all of us want humanity to go okay. We don't want to hurt anybody. We want humanity to be its best self. We're pro-humans. Don't worry about it. So Lestat's like, all right, bud. I guess I'm gonna believe you. So the replimoids come and they pick up Amel because he's gotta go back home. I guess it's his curfew. And like they part ways, and Lestat leaves with Louis, and he feels really hopeful about the future because he's like experienced what true love is for the kind of the first time. So that's the end. That's the end of the book. So yeah, this book was wild. I will never forget full-grown man arm baby breastfeeding through the palm. Like, what did I just read? It basically rewrote vampirism again. They keep changing the rules of vampirism. This one just said like, oh yeah, none of it mattered, everybody. Don't worry about it. Overall, I enjoyed reading this because I just do, but it's so freaking weird that if you try to explain what happened in this book to any rational human being, they're gonna think you had a mental break. But that being said, overall I did like it. It was an okay book. Let me know in the comments down below, what is one of the weirdest books you have ever read in your life that you're just like, wow, that had life before this book and after this book. This was a weird fulcrum point. Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.